Andy Austin here, up in the attic. I've got the seagulls above me. The babies are now nearly ready to fly, so they're flapping their wings, and yeah, it's getting a bit noisy, so I do apologise in advance. And I've got the fan on, so yeah, I'm hoping you can hear me. So, another video on archetypes. I wanted to look at Binah and Chokmah. This is the archetypal mother, the archetypal father, or the archetypal masculine, feminine, and the archetypal masculine, because I'm looking at it around the wrong way. Now, just a quick explanation. Everything in the emanation or manifestation of the Tree of Life is basically everything that's contained in Keter. So Keter then divides out into all these different components, and even that then implodes into something else. That gets all a bit complicated. What I'm going to do is go through just particular aspects of Binah and Chokmah, which are not the total explanation of these things. So don't think that this massive oversimplification I'm about to give you is the totality of it. One of the problems about this sort of material is that as people start to get a little bit of understanding of it, they then run with it with a lot of misunderstanding, and you end up with the Dan Brown phenomena, where you get all like the Bible code type phenomena and the conspiracy theories and numerologies and lots of madness that has a slight origin in something of Kabbalah, but then it becomes a massive misrepresentation, and that's what people think this is. And this is something I'm up against quite a lot with this subject, and also things like alchemy, magic, occultism, generally because of the hijacking of all these things by the nut brigade. Because I can tell you, things like Kabbalah, things like magic, things like occultism, it does half attract them, I can tell you. And actually the nut brigade often outnumber the people who are, I think, the people who actually understand it. I posted a comment like this, to this effect, on Reddit the other day, and essentially people just laid into me, who did I think I am, to say that everyone else is misunderstanding, as they then go into complete misrepresentation of anything that I wrote and anything that I said, and then run off at all these different tangents with complete fiction. And I thought, yeah, it kind of proves the point, really. But of course, I then get accused of the very thing that I'm accusing them of, and vice versa. So it's a complex thing. Archetypal female, archetypal male, the feminine and the masculine. Now, essentially, these are divisions of Keter. Wait, the focus comes back. These are divisions of Keter. So, Keter, being Godhead, is androgynous. It contains equal male, equal female. Now, within Christianity, they were very keen, the early Christians, as they started to formulate a religion. In the early days of essentially, you've got Jews who have followed the teachings of Jesus, whether or not he ever actually existed, but those books and documents were circulating. They then started to adopt those teachings. They didn't necessarily become what became the Catholic Church. That took years to form. You had lots and lots of cults from the original Hebrews, the original Jews, who were then adopting and formulating their own little religions and own interpretations and so forth. Now, those who then weren't adopted into the mainstream of what became Christianity are regarded as the Gnostics. And so you had lots of different Gnostic cults who had completely different understandings and completely different interpretations on those scriptures that became the Bible, and all the other books, all the Christian-inspired books that didn't get included into the Bible, which astonishingly to me, Christians refuse to read. It's like, okay, so you've got all these other Gospels, why haven't you read them? You go to church every week for years. Wouldn't you look at the other books too? No, because that goes against the teachings of the church. Now, the effect of that, I think, resonates today in some of the confusions we see with young people, and so, especially some of the Instagram type generation of confusions around gender. And allow me to explain how on earth what happened around about 600 to 800 AD is causing the Instagram generation to be very gender orientated, confused, gender dysphoria, that kind of stuff. So, archetypal mother, archetypal father, archetypal female, archetypal male. Now, the archetypes are the gods. The gods are the archetypes. At no point when I refer to a god do I think of it as an objective thing, anything other than an archetype that resonates a meaning across generations, across time, and across culture. That's the only way I think of the gods, so to speak. In Hinduism, we've got Shakti and Shiva, the archetypal feminine or goddess, the archetypal masculine or god. And they have multiple emanations as well. So there's so many gods within Hinduism. Many of the female gods are actually just different manifestations of Shakti. Many of the male gods are just different manifestations of Shiva. And that's quite difficult for some people to understand. How can that be? But the archetype isn't consistent. It gets expressed in different ways, in different contexts, according to different contexts. In Christianity, we've got multiple faces of Jesus. We have the nativity, so we've got the baby Jesus, we've got the teaching Jesus, we've got the crucified Jesus, and then we've got the Jesus of Revelation coming back to judge the world. And different sects of Christianity will focus on different aspects of that God, that archetype. Well, we go for the innocence and the baby Jesus. We go for the one overturning the temples, the Gaboric influence. We go for the one who's up on the cross. I was in a Catholic, nunnery, a convent, running a course in a convent over in Dublin, and absolutely fantastic people that ran it. But every corner you go around, there's a bloody dead Jesus up on a cross somewhere, of varying grotesqueness and brutality. I mean, really quite a horrible image, and yet some people venerate that image of someone being tortured to death. That seems to be a very pertinent thing for them. And I think that probably gives a certain mindset too. But the Christians did away with the archetypal feminine. There is no priestess in Christianity. And in the early days, they were very keen to get rid of any priestesses. The early religious cults, including a lot of the Judaic cults and the Judaic Christian cults that were regarded as Gnostics, equal ops regarding religion, you had the priest and the priestesses. And they were equal manifestations of the divine. There were different aspects of the divine. Christianity wanted to get rid of, basically, it criminalized women, which goes all the way through to the suffragette movement in the early 1900s. Women being subjugated, second class, not having the right to vote, having a little pat on the bottom in the office as you go and make the tea for the boss, that kind of shit. And so there's lots of that kind of stuff that went on, but there's no archetypal feminine other than the Virgin Mary. And Mary, important detail here, is a virgin. She didn't have an adulterous affair that she didn't tell her husband Joseph about. No. It was a virgin birth, an immaculate conception, because she's not unclean, she's not dirty. So now what we have is a benchmark by which to measure women. They're supposed to be like Mary. That is our archetypal feminine. So of course, if we have a woman who has sex outside of a church-sanctioned relationship, a marriage, then she's some kind of whore, slag, all of those detrimental, derogatory things. But look at all the archetypal men depicted throughout the Bible, and they all pretty much sleep around and have multiple wives and concubines. And so we still venerate young men going out and sowing their wild seed, and so forth. Now, things are changing over time, but what we've started to do is to attack and denigrate a lot of the archetypes, and a lot of the archetypal stories are no longer taught. They've been replaced by the notion of political correctness. Now, childhood is largely chemically adjusted now by society. We have medicalized childhood, and we now chemically correct children who don't conform to whatever prevailing social notion. So whether they can't sit still in classroom at school, or they just show a little bit too much spirit, they might have oppositional defiant disorder, they might have attention deficit disorder, hyperactivity disorder, and so on. For a little while we had the MMR scare, that complete nonsense that went on there, and then suddenly parents were looking at their children going, oh, that's what's wrong with Johnny, he must be autistic, he had the MMR. So that's what's essentially is the medicalization of anything in a child that we don't like. And so everything now is medicalized. I'm seeing reports and stories. This was used to be just confined to the US, but I'm now seeing this in the UK, where we have 3-year-olds, 3 years old, diagnosed as being bipolar. It's shocking to me, absolutely shocking. And anyone who has any sort of little breakdown, little episode as a child, immediately gets medicalized. And kids freak out. Kids do weird shit. I mean, I just remember my own childhood was full of weird shit. And this is the issue, is that now that is now a sign of something else. People, I went to a bit of a reunion, school reunion I organised, and talking to people back then, it was on Friends Reunited. Everyone liked to remind me of when I was in junior school, so I'd have been about probably 8 or 9 years old, and the times that I went to school wearing a dress. Now, why did I go to school wearing a dress? Because I thought it was hilarious, and it got me loads of attention, and I could go around and chase people in the playground and scare them. And my poor parents was like, really? And let me do it. Now, it was just me being slightly I was quite a disinhibited child, it has to be said. And yeah, there was nothing else to it apart from attention seeking on my part. It makes me wonder what would happen today if I was that child. And I would probably be the Ritalin kid. I have no doubt on that. I'd be a Ritalin kid. And I would also be somebody who is now probably getting hormone replacement therapy, because clearly I'm non-binary. Yeah. So, children are interesting little creatures in that, especially teenagers, highly impressionable. Highly impressionable. It's not. We tend to think children are only impressionable from other children and other teenagers and peer groups, but kids are impressionable by cultural prevailing notions, even if they're not directly communicated in a linear fashion to the child. And kids are also a screaming mess of hormones and neurosis and self-doubt and all of those other things, and can often struggle to articulate the simplest emotional sense. Unlike the kids on TV, who are incredibly emotionally literate and very articulate when it comes to stuff. And of course, that's not really how teenagers generally are. They're not as articulate as the TV shows like to present them to be. So now we have a prevailing thing where adults can look at the kids and go, there's something wrong with those kids. Something I've recognised is that people are frightened of children, especially when there's a group of them in the park. So, I mean, I walk the dogs quite a lot. We've got a number of parks here I rotate around. And especially with recent lockdown and kids not going to school, there's been lots of teenagers in the park. And lots of weed being smoked and beer being drunk. And kids doing kid stuff that kids do when they're in groups and they're 15 years old. And it amazes me what I then see written on the local forums. Everyone is frightened of those kids and want those kids reported and punished and police involved. We haven't got any police. But that kind of stuff, as opposed to, well, why not go and talk to them? Why is everyone so frightened now? And so it fuels this notion. There's something wrong with the kids. And the way that gets fixed is by ever-increasing medication therapy and now hormones. Archetypal female, archetypal male. When we have a kid who is gender dysphoric, I mean, anyway, there's lots I could say on that. We have children who are essentially messed up because, guess what? Most kids are at certain ages. They go through all sorts of identity confusions and all the rest of it. I mean, just remember your own teenage years. I never want to do that again, by the way. I'm never going to go through that again. Kids are now pressured into conforming to something else and are self-identifying, self-declaring, I'm not masculine, I'm not feminine. But what is it that they're not? You see, there's been a rebranding of anything that's masculine to be toxic. And so toxic masculinity has been a very prevalent thing amongst the internet generation. And so has the notion of the patriarchy, something that must be defeated. We also have this notion of the feminine, the root of that being Virgin Mary, which there's been a huge backlash against that over the years, particularly resulting from the women's birthing rights and the contraceptive pill, which essentially liberated women to have a sex life independent of fertility. And that was a remarkable thing culturally worldwide that started to change women empowerment. But if I'm 15 years old and I say I'm not binary because I'm not male, but I was born male, what am I not? What am I? And no one's asking, okay, so you're saying you're not masculine, but what is your measurement of masculine that you're saying that you're not? Because maybe what you are is masculine, it's just that you're mismeasuring it. When we have women who say they're, or girls, well, I'm non-binary because I don't identify as a woman. Well, again, what is the benchmark they're measuring it against? What are the archetypes in the world of those young people that they have been handed, that they're saying, I'm not that? And I suspect there's been a massive rebranding of the archetypes in more recent years of political correctness. Probably by recent years, the last 20 to 30 years, I think this has been going on for, getting stronger every year that goes on. And now we have children who don't know what the benchmark is. But whatever benchmark they do have, they're saying, well, that's not me. That's not me. But maybe no one is actually saying it is. Maybe their notion of this thing they're saying they're not is something that has been created in the confused world of teenagers by adults, by political correct notions, by progressive thought and ideology, but actually no one actually thinks that. It's just the impression of the patriarchy. I mean, what the hell is that? It is this notion of toxic masculinity. What the hell is that? We have people exist on a spectrum of stuff. So largely what we see is a reaction to something. And then we medicalize, hormone replace, surgically operate, and alter that person's life forevermore. But what is it? What are the archetypes that have been handed to these kids? Because I'm fairly sure a lot of that began in the early hundreds of years AD in the formation of the Catholic Church, and then all the subdivisions that came from there of Christianity, where the archetypes of what is masculine, the archetypes of what are feminine, are simply unclear. If we look into the Hindu system of the gods and goddesses, it's absolutely wonderful, the array of archetypes that are presented to people. My favourite being that of Kali, who simply put, she's the one who's got multiple arms and lots of weapons and holding severed heads. And Kali's sort of the great frightening one. Easiest way to put, she's the scary grandmother. She's the one who's seen it all, is scared of nothing, and is on your side. Because the heads are the demons, that are your demons, who have been slain by Kali. And so essentially what we have is a very powerful archetype, the matriarch, who has your best interests at heart. We also have various gods as well, who are the patriarch, who have your best interests at heart. In Western culture now, the matriarch and the patriarch are now self-serving. The new archetype is, those are archetypes that are self-serving, so therefore they must be done away with. Do not identify with them. And I think it is an absolute disaster. Now, I've massively oversimplified Binah and Chokmah. I would recommend, if you have Aleister Crowley's 777 or Stephen Skinner's Magician's Tables, if you don't have them, buy them. Just get both of those books. I'll put a thing in the description so you can see what they are. I would recommend you get those. They are essentially the key to all of this and give you all of the attributions to the different paths in Sephiroth. As always, if you have any questions, comments, feedback on any of this stuff, if there's any particular subject you would like me to talk on, do please stick that in the comment section and click the like button. I'm not sure it makes any difference being a member video, but click it anyway. It won't do any harm. And thank you for watching my little video here.